Welcome back into another episode of the Daft on Draft podcast presented by FanDuel. Today, James and I are finishing out our summer scouting here. So we're going to start our safeties conversation for safeties week. And that'll be the end of summer scouting. We timed this thing out perfectly because we're getting into week 0 stuff next week. Today, we're talking about Georgia's KJ Bolden, Notre Dame's Tae Johnson, and Texas's Jelani McDonald. Some housekeeping stuff on Daft on Draft. I am dropping a new series this year as well. I'm going to pay attention to a little bit more rookie action in terms of NFL level stuff. So I'm going to have a rookie report out every single week where I focus on one rookie standout, break down that tape and kind of talk through it. It's out on the site today. Or will be at noon. If you're watching on YouTube as this is premiering, yes, it will be out. But I'm going to do Cleveland Browns left tackle, top 10 pick Spencer Fano versus the Chicago Bears. So look forward to that. But that's all I've got in terms of housekeeping. So let's dive into this episode talking about these top 3 safeties in the class. All right, last week of summer scouting here. We have done every position except for safeties. And so here we go. We're hitting safeties here. Again, we're going to go consensus order. So we're talking about 3 per day the next 3 days. Today, we're talking about Georgia's KJ Bolden, Notre Dame's Tae Johnson, and Texas's Jelani McDonald. James, I've had some fun with this group, man. It's looking like a pretty stellar group of safeties we've got here.
Yeah, we saved one of the best position groups for last. I mean, I would put safety behind defensive tackle and probably receiver and like guard. I mean, guard's kind of cheating because I can move all of these tackles to guard and make any class a strong guard class. But I think safety is like a top 4 position in this class. I have let's see, I've got a first round grade and 4 seconds and 2 thirds. And I think there's some depth in the class that could end up with late day 2 grades as well.
Yeah, these 3 players that we're talking about today are all 3 in my top 33 on my board. So I really do enjoy it. And then one we'll talk about tomorrow is sitting at 45 as well. So I've got 4 safeties in my top 50 right now of the guys we've watched so far. So very fun class. Very fun class. Again, we're going to go in early consensus order here and how we're going to talk about these guys. And so that's going to lead us off with KJ Bolden. James, why don't you kick us off on KJ Bolden?
Yeah, so KJ Bolden, 6 foot flat, 190, definitely undersized. His weight is 6th percentile for safeties. The lack of size doesn't show up in too many areas, although he isn't the best at taking on blocks, but he is a really solid run defender, incredibly consistent tackler. One of the things with this safety class, I've never seen a safety class that was all around as good at tackling as these guys are. And then you've got Ty Benefield just like launching into people, chaotic all over the field. But like looking at FBS safeties, the lowest missed tackle rate last year, Tae Johnson was 3rd at 3.8%. KJ Bolden was 5th at 4.9%, and Jelani McDonald was 6th at 5.4%. So a rare tackling consistency with this group. Main thing that KJ Bolden brings to the table is range on the back end and explosiveness to close into passing lanes. He explodes out of breaks, erases leverage, separation in an instant. He can undercut passing lanes. He can, catch up with a shallow cross when he's out leveraged. If he bites on play action, which does happen occasionally, he's got the recovery speed to get back in phase. When he gets into man coverage situations, I think skilled route runners are able to cross him up occasionally. And he is fairly aggressive when it comes to biting on double moves, biting on the first thing that the receiver throws at him. So I want him to play with more balance and body control in single coverage. But I mean, I really wouldn't have this guy in too many man coverage situations. I would just have him patrolling on the back end, making plays.
Yeah. We had a lot of similar notes here on KJ Bolden. The one disagreement I had is I didn't see an overly rangy guy over the top. I saw a guy dropping down low hole and having more success dropping down low hole than I did over top. Not to say that that's not in his arsenal, but I saw like a really quick-witted low hole defender to feel out those backside routes and crowd up the hashes, those backside hashes. Clean transitions to get back into phase when changing directions and getting vertical. So I do think that the transitions fluidity allows him, and then the anticipation allows him to kind of cover a little bit more ground, but I did think that the over the top speed just kind of leveled out a little bit. High IQ run defender from the box, smart and disciplined fitter in terms of his assignment and run fits. Again, short tackler and a form tackler in the open field at that as well, man. He will just come up and he'll square you up in the open field. So really no liabilities in terms of his ability to defend the run. As you mentioned, that's going to be a common theme on today's episode, which you love to see when we're talking about safeties. Highly instinctual player when matching and when working downhill as a robber. Controlled pacing and controlled angles working downhill in pursuit as well. Good sideline to sideline speed to track down bouncing ball carriers. Again, I didn't see like an overly explosive. I did think the top end speed kind of lowered out. So bursty, top end kind of leveled out is kind of what I saw. Sticky against running backs and tight ends when he can get in their hip pockets. Not afraid to run through running backs and pass pro either when he's coming downhill as a blitzer. So just a really physical safety here. Catch technique and man coverage is strong when he's able to get his hands on receivers at the top of routes. But I have in my notes as well that he's slow to transition in tight man coverage, and he's kind of got to fight to get back in phase there too. But as you said, not a lot of situations where I want this guy in man coverage too much. And then an instant trigger when he's working downhill and he recognizes the action in front of him. So again, that's going to be a common theme we see with these guys as well. But a lot to like here from KJ Bolden, man. He currently sits 22 on my board and safety 2 for me.
He's 22 on my board and safety 2 for me.
So let's get. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to rush the conversation. If you get more to add.
Well, a couple things. Number one, I'm glad you mentioned the trigger and run support. I actually had him rated as the with the highest rating among safeties for play recognition in run defense. And did you watch the Mississippi State game by chance?
Yes, I did.
Okay, there was a rep where he was able to range over the top and keep up with Brennan Thompson. But I do agree, like the explosiveness is a lot more, I think, what his calling card is going to be. Like I assume you watched Alabama. He had that rep where he undercut the Ryan Williams route. Just so much closing burst into passing lanes. I think with some more playmaking opportunities, like his production, 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups is actually pretty good. But he's the kind of guy that could have like Tae Johnson levels of production if he just got a few more favorable opportunities.
So let's talk about Tae Johnson then, because boy, do I love me some Tae Johnson, man. Let me get his notes up here. I thought I had it all squared away, but I guess not. There we go. Tae Johnson. Dude, I am in love with Tae Johnson. I think this is a top 10 player in the class. I think he's a top 10 player in the class. He currently sits, I think, 8th on my board. Yes, 8th on my board right now. Yeah. So I'm a huge Tae Johnson fan. Again, explosive pursuit speed when he's tracking down backside ball carriers and coming from backside pursuit. Fast feet and his pedal over the top as well, man. So we're talking unlimited range over the top and explosive downhill. So either direction, forward or backwards, I think that he is firing on all cylinders. Again, excellent tackler there for him. Only a 4% missed tackle rate. He's like, the ultimate deepest man on the field with the ability to cover ground. The speed turn and change of direction capabilities when he's forced to shift his weight is tremendous, phenomenal as well. So he's twitchy, he's explosive, he's rangy. I don't know where we are lacking in terms of boxes checked for Tae Johnson. Maybe like throwing him out in the slot and asking him to sit in man coverage is maybe like where you could say he has room for improvement. But he's not afraid to fly downhill. He's not afraid to fit the run in the box. Again, another guy who's with an excellent downhill trigger when he diagnoses the action in front of him. I would say the ball skills are just average. There are a couple interceptions that just kind of hit him in the hands. But he doesn't necessarily adjust to footballs well off of his frame with a limited radius. Most of his interceptions fell into his lap. And then as a player similar to Tae Johnson or to KJ Bolden here as well, needs to do a better job of fighting hands out of his frame when deconstructing blocks as well. And then he's another guy willing to bite on double moves when he's looking to kind of jump and make a big play underneath, like trying to trigger downhill and bite to try to rob interceptions. But other than that, man, like the boxes get checked out the wazoo right here for Tae Johnson.
Yeah, a lot of similar notes. Like I said, 12th on my board, first round grade for Tae Johnson. I comped him to Antoine Bethea. I think he is just a prototypical ball hawking free safety. Wish he was filled out a little bit. 6016, 197 is a pretty slender build. And really, all of my weaknesses for Tae Johnson come down to physicality. So, like, my lowest rated skills are block shedding, strength in man coverage, stopping power as a tackler. Those are the kind of things that can get him hung up. Like when somebody makes contact with him on a perimeter block, he isn't really good at playing off of those, and he will get put on the ground if they're able to sustain that for a while. But just the definition of an easy mover, like he moves like an NCAA 14 running back. You know how there was like no like strain or lag when you would try to change directions. It's just wherever he wants to go, he's moving there instantly. That comes down to range over the top. I thought he was really fluid in man coverage. And then the short area burst to pounce on throws, just blazing closing burst. And even stuff like, he's somebody I saw him consistently be able, like, maybe be a little bit late to identify a rub route or a switch release and kind of get out leveraged, and then just instantly screams downhill, evens out that leverage, makes a tackle for a loss or a short gain. You mentioned the interception. So I had this written down. He had 4 interceptions last year. 3 of them were overthrows that fell right in his lap. But then he dropped 3 interceptions as well. And those were like actually really high quality plays on the ball. So if the production kind of evened out, but he could have really had a historic production if he had converted a few more of those. The fact that he's a 1-year starter and he is so instinctive, reading concepts, reading routes, he will still get tricked by like more complex, like 3-man concepts. He has a few coverage busts occasionally, but the zone IQ and the awareness on the back end for somebody with such little experience is really impressive. Would have liked to see him, play more press man, I guess, but it's kind of like KJ Bolden. That's the kind of thing you're going to have him do a handful of snaps per game. You want him with eyes on the quarterback and just triggering on routes over the middle of the field. So yeah, Tae Johnson, 12th overall. If he gets a little bit stronger, he is approaching that blue chip prospect territory.
Yeah. I had so much fun watching his tape, man. I had so much fun watching his tape. And that's going to take us into Texas's Jelani McDonald. Before we get there, it's worth shouting out that like all 3 of these units that these guys play on are stacked defensive units. A good reason why all 3 of these teams sit in the top 5 odds to win national championships on FanDuel. Notre Dame at plus 650, Texas at plus 850, and Georgia at plus 850. So all top 5 odds on FanDuel to win the Natty. All 3 guys will be key contributors on those defenses. Let's move then to Texas, and let's talk about Jelani McDonald, who I thought if he came out last year, which I know he kind of thought about it, there were some conversations, would have been a day 2 pick last year, probably a 2nd round pick last year had he come out as well. Goes back to school, and now is an anchor piece on that Texas defense along him, Colin Simmons, presumably Rasheem Biles as well transferring over. They've got some anchor pieces on that defense. But James, I'll let you kick it off here with Jelani McDonald.
Yeah, so I ended up a tad bit lower on Jelani McDonald than I think you are, and I know some other people whose opinions I respect are. I do really like him. He's just inside of my top 50, so still higher on him than consensus. But he did end up as safety 5 for me heading into the season. So 6022, 194 with. I had him projected at 32 3/4 inch arms. I mean, the arms are vines essentially. He is kind of tall and slender, but like the lack of mass literally doesn't show up in any games that I watched. I view Jelani McDonald as more of a pure box safety. obviously an imposing physical profile. He's got the prototypical length to take on blocks, which you see him do violently, and to press tight ends theoretically at the line of scrimmage. He only played one press coverage snap in 2025, but there's no reason, nothing on his tape to suggest that he couldn't thrive in a more press man heavy role. And I think he is really fluid and balanced, mirroring tight end option routes. He had a really nice rep against Lawson Lucky for Georgia. Really good eye discipline and off man, reads the receiver's hips, doesn't overcommit, doesn't take himself out of position. I think the closing burst is kind of mediocre, but the stride length makes up for it, where he can cover a short amount of space fairly quickly. And then when he gets into tight man coverage, he really suppresses the route speed and just kind of grinds down the acceleration and makes the route no longer a threat, essentially. When it comes to like back end rangy coverage, I thought he had average speed and explosiveness, pretty tight hips with really choppy transitions out of his pedal. He does do a lot to make things harder for himself. His feet are extremely restless and inefficient as he's reading the passing concept, and that just makes his transition a little bit more clunky because he's got to even out his footwork once he sees it. You see the plant and drive stall pretty consistently and not be able to close enough cushion. So I do think there are some movement skills limitations on the back end, but as far as like a striker over the middle of the field, like a robber safety that's just pinning down on in breakers from the backside, I do think he could play that role pretty effectively. There were some nice reps in the Kentucky game of him breaking on routes over the middle of the field, but that's going to involve him gaining a lot more experience. And one of my biggest issues with Jelani McDonald is the drive angles downhill were pretty reckless, would lead to missed tackles, lead to him whiffing on the ball. So he's got to, start taking more favorable playmaking angles when he does break on the pass and get a little bit cleaner footwork in his transitions. As far as his other kind of like mental processing stuff in zone coverage, I see him consistently have good field vision and connect to routes that are approaching from across the field. Very intimidating presence over the middle of the field. You see receivers hear footsteps as he's closing in on in-breaking routes, but he's way too dependent on reading the quarterback to make coverage decisions. He needs to develop his play diagnosis, eye balance, so that he's diagnosing the passing concept and keying the quarterback's drop and his wind up. There's a lot of hesitations and second guessing before he's like committing to a break. So I was kind of underwhelmed by the back end coverage, but as far as like a box safety that's just closing the lid on anything that starts to break through the second level, he is an absolute safety blanket. Assaults blockers, really jarring punch, locks them out of his frame. As with everyone pretty much in this class, a very consistent tackler. He's got a massive tackle radius where he can just swallow everything in his vicinity. If he takes maybe an imprecise angle or kind of gets shaken like in the open field, he can just expand and make a shoestring tackle if necessary. And then really good stopping power, zaps forward momentum at the point of contact. So yeah, I had him comp to Tracy Walker. That was more of the play style that I saw with Jelani McDonald, but a really good player for sure. I think they should play him in more press man, because I think he could be one of the best press man safeties, like against tight ends in college football.
Interesting. I love that. Yeah. So when you first look at the guy, the frame is what sticks out to you. 6'0", 194. Like, he is a long dude, which you hit on. Yeah, all of the notes that I haven't read for negatives on Jelani McDonald are pretty much due to him being high cut and a little tight in the hips. Like that everything else, I think he's a highly instinctual player. I would even push back on the range a little bit, because I do see a little bit of that like high end anticipation that allows him to beat it a little bit early and get out of his transitions a little bit early to kind of make up some ground. I do think he's probably more of a quarter half safety or a split safety when he is playing over the top. And I wouldn't put him in any single high situations. He does have some single high reps on tape, but I don't think he's a player that you necessarily want in single high looks. But yeah, in terms of the red that I have on my notes, it matches almost bar for bar. Slow to transition and turn and run vertically down the field. There are some times that you see him in some like catch technique, and when he's not able to get his hands on receivers, he's really straining to get back in phase over the top vertically. A high cut player in his pedal. I think the foot fire is just average in his pedal as well. When he is getting back in his pedal, transitions are rough when he is forced to throttle down and flip his hips as well. So once that speed's built up, it takes him quite a bit to kind of work back downhill at that. So you mentioned, the average kind of burst back out of his pedal a little bit there. And then the last two things I have in red as well: pursuit angles in need of recalibration. You mentioned like kind of the reckless pursuit angles there. I have that in my notes, and underlined, which means I saw it on multiple occasions where I felt the need to kind of accentuate it in my notes as well. And then there were like some interceptions left on the field by him as well, for Jelani McDonald. So the ball skills, he's got a really flashy diving interception on his tape, but for the most part, there's some times where he's in a position where he triggers downhill. The Oklahoma game, he's got
should have had a pick six for Oklahoma.
Yeah, he's got John Mateer dead to rights. John Mateer can't see a robber to save his freaking life, but he's got him dead to rights a couple times, and yeah, dropped the pick six in that game for sure. But in terms of the rest of the profile, again, the tackling, exceptional. Again, long arms. When he gets a ball carrier in his grasp, they're kind of dead to rights there. I did see in off man some really good ability to stand his ground and get in catch technique and engage with that length, and really sink into hip pockets there. Along the perimeter, man, he's punching receivers and deconstructing blocks as a run blocker. Probably the best that I've seen in this class, just coming downhill and absolutely dismantling receivers trying to block for little screens along the boundary or RPO flats, things like that. As much as the top end speed isn't there, I did see a pretty easy accelerator to get to that fairly limited top end speed from him. But what stands out to me most about Jelani McDonald is you're always seeing him communicating on the back end. Like, he's processing information at a very fast level. You can see him directing traffic, pointing, communicating, getting himself in position on that back end, passing off. When he is dropping down his hook curl robber, he's not letting receivers cross his face, and then he's immediately communicating, passing off, and finding other lanes to hop into. So I see a really high-end instinctual player, and I think that allows him to have a little bit more range over the top than like his athletic traits should allow for him to have. He erases tight ends underneath. I do worry about the ability to kind of turn and run up the seam. But anything underneath, man, he is engulfing receivers crossing his face. If he's in man coverage and tight ends underneath, he's engulfing them and kind of taking them through them. And then in terms of ball skills as well, yes, there's some plays left on the field, but he is physical through the hands. When he's got a chance to make a play at the catch point and he's in tight coverage with receivers, he absolutely just rakes through the hands. And so estimated 4.45 40, that seems probably a little bit high. I'd probably put him at like a 4.51 4.52 range in terms of 40. But the instincts are just off the charts with Jelani McDonald. And so you're right, probably more of a box, but I do think there's a little bit more split match quarters ability to his game as well.
Yeah, a couple more things that came to mind. So you mentioned the speed. Did you watch the Texas A&M game? There was a rep in that game where I forget which tight end it was, that like it was maybe kind of a stop and Borkirker. It was a stop and go, and he kind of got left in the dust and couldn't recover. So that was a little bit concerning. I will say, and like I boosted my grade on him a little bit because I revisited the tape because I was so much lower on him than everyone else. I do think that, a lot of my issues with his kind of lack of fluidity and lack of transitional burst, I think, can be improved by better instincts on the back end. Like if he's second guessing and then he's also not the most fluid athlete, like it's going to look really rough when he's trying to plant his foot and break downhill. So I think if he starts seeing things a little bit better and kind of has a wider cone of vision. I think those transitions will get a little bit more clean. And then the last thing I would say is, like, as a box safety, if he's going to be, dropping into the hook curl and playing like first level spot drop zone, he's got to like stop getting manipulated out of windows by quarterbacks' eyes so easily. Like if he's got a dig or a sit route behind him, the quarterback can very easily look him off and kind of widen out that window. So yeah, a lot of intricacies in coverage that I want to see him improve, but he also has such a high floor because, like, worst case scenario, he's just going to be a rock solid box safety.
Yeah, so we see McDonald a little bit differently there. You have it as instincts a little bit lower than I did as well. While you were talking about Jelani McDonald, I went through PFF's alignment snap count on all three of these guys, and all three of these guys, man, are pretty versatile. So Tae Johnson, 113 snaps in the box, 397 over the top, and 52 in the slot. KJ Bolden, 173 in the box, 371 over the top, 168 in the slot. And then McDonald, 218 in the box, 388 over the top, and 116. Oh, I'm sorry, I have that backwards. Jelani McDonald is 173 in the box, 371 over the top, 168 in the slot. And then Bolden is 218 in the box, 388 over the top, and 116 in the slot. So all three guys present a good amount of variety of ways to get them on the field. Texas does a lot of weird, like, three safety rotational stuff too, where like McDonald will be playing middle of the field high, but like he's middle field high in like a three safety look as well. So that probably inflates his over the top number free safety look total quite a bit there as well. But all three of these guys, man, have a variety of ways to get on the field. And then I think McDonald, obviously, a little bit more liability in one phase of the game there, but all three, like, you can expect a pretty rock solid football player on the field no matter where you put them. McDonald sits 33 on my board right now.
Yeah, I've got McDonald 43, so I'm actually not too much lower than you are.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you have anything else on these three safeties you want to talk about, James, before we get out of here?
That's all I got for these guys.
All right. Let me pull up the list for tomorrow real fast to see what we're talking about. Tomorrow, we will be talking about LSU's Ty Benefield, Iowa's Zach Lutmer, and Ohio State's Jalen McClain. I must say as well, I said I have 4 safeties in my top 50 already. I have not watched Jalen McClain yet, so there's a real possibility that I have 5 safeties in my top 50, but I will have him watched and written up by tomorrow for our episode. But that's all I've got, James. So if that's all we got, that's another episode of the Daft on Draft podcast under wraps. Next week, man, I think we're diving into like game action stuff, like wrapping up like overarching thoughts on summer scouting and then getting into week 0 action. So really looking forward to that as well. I am dropping a Monday morning hangover episode every Monday from this year for the start of the season. So recording that on Sunday nights. I've got a couple guests lined up to do weekly segments for that big Monday morning hangover show as well. So very excited about that coming to you guys as well. But until tomorrow, this has been another episode of the Daft on Draft podcast. See ya.